Hi everyone, welcome to the NGINX unit talk on SUSECon 2021. Glad to be here and a little bit sad that we have this opportunity just in a virtual space. For me it feels a little bit too long to talk to you via Zoom, via pre-recorded sessions. Really looking forward to it, to meet you soon on some events. And so we will talk about NGINX Unit in today's talk, a little bit about security, and of course about SUSE Linux and how to manage, hard to secure, and it is not really funny for it's not fun for a DevOps engineer, SysOps engineer, for anybody who needs to maintain this part of the application server or this stack of applications. So that's why we introduce you today NGINX Unit, and what can Unit be used for to make this picture not gonna happen on your application server. What can we use to make it a clean environment, or what do you use today to make this as a clean environment? So today, I need to move out my face a little bit of the picture. This is a little bit smaller. So to get around this sort of thing, you can use Docker, for example, right? This is the kind of the today's choice if you have an application server and you want to isolate your applications with different programming languages, different libraries in use, and you want to have something where you can ship your application code without messing too much around on your application server. So Docker is a great tool, and we love Docker as well. But it's a little bit of an operational overhead to manage all those different containers. So you have to build the container, you have to ship it in a private registry if you do not want to have your application code sitting around somewhere in a public registry on the internet. You have to manage your registry or use something like the products of the huge cloud providers that exists. And you need something like an NGINX reverse proxy to balance the traffic to your containers. And I've used this for many years and still doing it, and it's a great thing. I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but if you run containers on your production server, I think you have seen this kind of problem at least once in your life. So you start the container, that's totally fine, but what about some data you want to share with the container? You can mount a volume with docker-v. Cool. Inside of your Docker container, you have maybe a run user, hopefully, not root. So then you have to map the users from your operating system to the users inside of your Docker container. Or do you do something like chmod 777 for all the files you are mounting in the container? Or if you want to change some files in the container, you have to do docker exec, whatever, bin bash, change something, then adapt the image. Redeploy, stuff like that. Or if you want to copy something from the container or in the container, you have docker cp. And I had this kind of problems for a very long time. I'm not saying Docker is evil for that. I really love Docker, and I believe it's a great technology, and all the containerized ecosystem is a huge win for us. And that's why this is a little bit of a disclaimer. I'm not saying that Docker isn't a good approach to handle your production workloads. Docker is an absolutely great tool and absolutely great ecosystem to manage your application workloads, but it's not the one-size-fits-all approach. There are different opportunities to manage your production workloads, even secure, with less effort and without even touching Docker for your application workloads. So that's why and where NGINX Unit comes in. a little bit of a time frame or a history where NGINX Unit comes from. NGINX started back in 2004 and had a very successful journey till today. At 2 weeks ago, we officially hit the milestone to be the most used web server on the internet. And back in 2018, we released NGINX Unit version 1.0, and I was a customer at this time and used NGINX Unit the first time for my PHP applications and really loved it. And a lot happened since then. So now we started with version 1.0 back in 2018, and 3 years later we are on version 1.24 at the moment, shortly about a new release. And I want to show you what is Unit and explain what is Unit and what can it be used for. You're familiar what is NGINX. NGINX can be your web server. NGINX can be your proxy server. NGINX can be your WAV. A lot of capabilities what you can do with NGINX. And NGINX Unit can run your application code, and it's more than an application server. Because a lot of people think about an application server as something that can run your application code, but that's it. And with NGINX Unit, that's not the case. With NGINX Unit, you have a lot more possibilities. You can run your application code, so Unit is your application server for that, but at the same time, you can use NGINX Unit to manage your traffic, your ports. You will be exposed to the internet. You can secure them with TLS certificates. Unit can manage your TLS certificates. You have a lot of other security options, and this is exactly where we want to dive into in this short video today. So why is NGINX Unit so important and so simple to use for developers and DevOps? So first, as said, NGINX Unit, let me jump here to another slide and make this a little bit smaller for you so we can see what are the real benefits here. So NGINX Unit, as said, is able to manage all the things you need to deploy your application, to make your application available and the service consumable from your customers. So we are talking about the application itself. So this is this little block here where your application code lives. So let's talk about PHP, for example. So the application contains your PHP files. Let's talk about Ruby. Yeah, this is your Ruby application, your Rails application, your Java jar file, for example, or your war file when you use Java, and a lot of other application or programming languages that we support. So this sits here, but this is not the end of the story. So this is just the application code, but that's not really helpful at the end for you, because the customer cannot consume your application code. So then we have NGINX Unit for your application code. That's the small part where I would say NGINX Unit is your application server. We run your application code, but even more important, we do run your application code, but we make it consumable from the outside. And how we do this? So it all starts on layer 4, TCP layer, with a listener. A listener is something like, you may know from NGINX, listen on port 80, listen on port 8080, listen on port 443, stuff like that. So this is a listener. NGINX Unit is able to manage your listeners. So you can expose something on port 8080 and it will all be in one product. Everything will live inside of your NGINX Unit instance. So this is the first part of the story. So that means this is this little purple arrow down here. The most simple setup is something like a listener on port 8080. Great. Then we pass the incoming traffic directly to our application. So this would be the really most easy use case. Or a listener can be 8080, and then we can pass the traffic to an upstream, and this is the same idea that we have in NGINX when it comes to reverse proxy. So what we do is we proxy the traffic through NGINX Unit to another service, to another listener that is available on the network. All right, so a little bit of more complex thing what you can do with NGINX Unit is you can configure routes. And a route object is a very, very powerful feature we have in NGINX Unit, because in NGINX Unit, the route object can contain a lot of different logic. It can ask for, or it can refer the HTTP verbs. Is get allowed? Is option allowed? Is post allowed? We could check URI segments, and we can do decisions and can make decisions based on an incoming request. And I will show you the documentation on the website when we come to the demo part of this presentation. So remember, the routes thing is a very, very, very powerful thing we can use to decide to which application we want to send the incoming traffic, or what files we want to share from disk. So even that is possible. Remember on something like a React application. So you have a JavaScript framework, React.js for example. You have an application, you build it using Yarn or NPM, and at the end you have a build folder with your artifacts in it. It's all static content. It's a index.html file and a couple of JavaScript and CSS files. So not really something where you would need an application server. You need a simple web server. And even that can be done or handled with NGINX Unit. You can dump the files on a specific part on your app server on disk and configure your unit, and Unit will be able to serve this application based on the configuration. I will show you this in a little demo or in a little config example on the website in a minute. So this was a little bit of a jump, and let me go back to the other slides where we left off. But I think that was important to see what's possible with NGINX Unit. We can configure everything from the listener, the network stack in TCP layer 4, down to the user space where your application code lives and where your application server lives to run and execute your application code or ship your static files. And all that can be configured with a simple JSON API. So NGINX Unit is fully configurable with a RESTful API over the network using a JSON configuration syntax, which is pretty handy when it comes to automated deployments with the CI/CD pipelines. It can all sit in a single JSON file. And this is the uniqueness of the NGINX Unit product or project, that you have one tool, one API to maintain the whole stack from TCP layer 4 down to the user space inside of your application. Just imagine something like a PHP application, for example, and you have FPM, PHP FPM, Fast Process Manager, to handle your PHP code, the workloads. To configure your PHP FPM, you have to do something like a pool configuration. So you have to touch the FPM configuration on your application server. You have something like ASGI proxy, NGINX for example, that will decide, hey, this is a PHP file, send the request to the FPM. The FPM will handle the request and respond with the compiled or interpreted PHP code. And then we are ending up in this situation where we got started today with this picture where we have different PHP versions, different pool configurations, different ini files on your server, and then it becomes really messy when it starts with 10 different PHP pool configurations and 10 different FCGI things and 10 different config files, and then we are on a good way ending up in a situation on the application server, what we already saw in the intro image. And this is different with Unit because you have one API endpoint. You have a configuration syntax that is RESTful or that is JSON based for RESTful API. You can all configure with a simple API call. Next part here is you can run multiple applications. That's why I said you can run 5 different PHP applications with 5 different PHP versions, starting from PHP 5.6, 7.1, 7.2, 8.0, not a problem at all. And you can even better run PHP applications beside a Ruby application, beside a Java application, beside a Go application on one single NGINX unit. And NGINX Unit provides you the high performance production grade HTTP interface that you already know from NGINX. And we support, or NGINX Unit support, a various amount of different programming languages. So as said, you can use it for PHP applications, you can use it for Python applications in Ruby, for Perl, as well as for Go and Node.js. So the integration for Go and Node.js is a little bit different from PHP, Python, Ruby, and Perl. And I see Java is missing here, but not a problem at all. So we have PHP, Python, Ruby, Perl, and Java in on this slide, and we have NGINX Unit for Go and Node.js. But yeah, based on the time we have in today's session, I do not want to dive deep into the different languages, because NGINX Unit is built to work for all programming languages kind of the same. So there are differences in the configuration, but from the overall user experience, the configuration and the way you work with NGINX Unit is absolutely identical no matter what application or what language you're using. That's why I do not want to dive too deep into this and spend more time on the general concept and the introduction about some security best practices and benefits. And I want to touch the SUSE Linux way of using NGINX Unit. As said before, everything is JSON based and can be configured within RESTful API. On the left side, we have a little bit of a description for the configuration on the right. And a very important thing is point number 2. So where I can send this JSON. So where I can connect to my unit configuration endpoint. And we have 2 different options here. Option number 1 is the default one. And this is what we do when we build NGINX Unit for OpenSUSE. Unit's configuration endpoint will be available over an socket. This is the default value, but you can change this to an IP and port combination. But be sure or be aware of that this config endpoint has to be protected and not be exposed to the internet, as this is the interface to configure your applications running on your unit instance. So please make sure you secure the socket, or if you want to expose the configuration via IP port combination, make sure it's not exposed to the internet. Supported methods: get, put, post, delete. With get, you can receive the information from the current configuration. Put is an override, so you will update a specific configuration block. Post will do some matching, and we'll see, okay, this block, for example, my block, is already present, so I will update the values that has been changed, or I will add new values to the configuration. Yeah, and with delete, you can delete a specific configuration value or object. And yeah, so this is, I think, enough from the introduction side of the fence. I want to show you a little bit SUSE-based content. I think that's why we're here. That's what we want to hear. So, unfortunately, I haven't found and pre-built package for SUSE here. So let me show you. Let me show you our website for NGINX Unit, because you will find all the information you need on the website. So that's why I want to show you a little bit here. So it's unit.nginx.org, unit.nginx.org. And yeah, you have in the About section, you have a lot more information about what NGINX Unit is, what it is used for, and what programming languages we support. But it's basically something similar you have already heard in the last 20 minutes. The installation part here is interesting when you want to get started. For OpenSUSE, we have two different ways, or I have tested two different ways of making Unit available for OpenSUSE. One is obviously Docker. So we have Docker images, officially supported Docker images for our NGINX Unit server, available on the Docker Hub. So you can Docker pull our images. Make this a little bit bigger. So this is one thing. I've tested this on OpenSUSE. Docker works on SUSE, so this will work as well. But I want to cover a little bit more here and fill this gap of the maybe missing package with the information you need to build NGINX Unit from source on your OpenSUSE server. And yeah, so this said, I've talked with our package maintainers, and at this point it looks like there are not many requests for the OpenSUSE packages. And yeah, this is a little bit of an information for you. If there are requests, or if there are many requests for the OpenSUSE operating system that we need pre-built packages for that, we can absolutely fill this gap and build packages for Cyber, for example, in our nightly pipeline as well. So reach out on Twitter or on our GitHub issue section or the NGINX Unit mailing list and let us know what's the feeling of the community about having a pre-built binary package for NGINX Unit. All right, so let me connect to my SUSE instance. All right, so this is my SUSE instance. I've just created a couple of days ago, and I have installed a couple of pre-requirements to build NGINX Unit from source. So we need GCC Mercurial to get this AG command line tool to get the source code from Mercurial, libopenSSL Devil, and PCRE Devil. So that's basically the things we need. So then we have this configure syntax, and before that, and that's missing here, but let me show you this here. So what we need to do is we need to HG clone. Awesome is not. Let me do sudo bash. Maybe that's a thing here. Clear, right? So now let's do AG clone. Right. So let's clone the Mercurial repository. You do not have to do this from root. You can use sudo as well, but I will do this on my demo system with root. So we have the unit directory, we cd into this, and then we have this configure script. And then we can do configure. The state is the path or the directory where NGINX Unit stores our state file. So that means the configuration you apply via the REST call will be saved, right? So just a matter if your server, if you have to reboot the server on the way up, so on the boot process, and at the point where NGINX Unit starts again it can read the config, the latest config from the state file, and apply that. So make sure the state file is at least as protected as your TCP/IP IP port combination for configuration, or the config socket as well, because it contains the whole configuration as well. So the log path is the way where NGINX unit can log into. So this is the control part of the thing. So with Unix, it's the default, and when you put some TCP in here, you can configure it to listen on a IP and port combination. And yeah, the prefix is where your binaries live at the end. Great. So let's configure this. Let's configure. Spoiler alert, Python module will be next. So let's configure this one. It will not take long. So I do not have to pause this because it's, as you said, it will already, it's already done. So let's check. As said, the prefix was user local, bin, sbin, lib include. Here this is the directory path for our language modules for Python or PHP. We'll build the Python module in the next step. So this is the PID file, log file, control socket, all interesting things. The unprivileged user is nobody. This can be changed as well. In the configure script, you can attach a run user. And yeah, make sure you have created the user before building that or installing it. Cool. So that worked. So we have the configure. So let's type make to make the things happen. And after make, we can use make install to install everything. And same thing, I do not even have to pause this video because it wouldn't take long. That's it. Boom. Done. Make install. There you go. That's it. So that means we have in user local sbin, we will have our unit binary. So let's, there you go. So unit D is a thing. So let's type version and let's see what we have. It's 1.24 and our config syntax, that's what we had. Cool. Let's start unit D. Okay, I think it was already started. So let's use curl Unix socket and let's go and see if we can configure it. Run control dot unit dot sock, can't type, as always, localhost. And this is NGINX unit. So this is step number 1. So now we have kind of the unit application server, proxy server, web server core. And as said, for the different programming languages, we have application modules. So let's build an application module from source, and this is, for example, Python. And to build Python from source, we say configure and then the language module, Python. The module name will be Python 3, and then we apply the Python config. And let me break this one thing here, or stop that, because that was something I got confused. Python config is a binary that comes with the Python installation, and you have this for Python as well as for PHP. So anytime you see on our website, if you want to build something from source, which is here, source code, configuring modules, Python, you will see this Python config thing, right? And this is path name of the Python config script, and this is a Python thing. You can easily check this by typing this Python config in your terminal. All right, cool. So let's build the Python module from source. Same thing, will not take long. We are using Python version 2.7.18, so that wouldn't make sense to call it Python 3 though. But for demo purpose, I think it's good. yeah, we can change, or you can change that, and you should definitely use Python 3 instead of the old 2.7 version, but I think that's the default for OpenSUSE. As I'm not an OpenSUSE expert, this could be wrong, but that's what we see here. So then we make it, we make install, and we are good. So that means we have this this shared object, and this will live in our modules folder in here. So let's grab this, cd into this, and see what's in there. There is our Python 3 unit.so file, and this is a language module. You do not have to load a language module in some sort. It's good enough to have it inside of the modules folder, and on startup NGINX unit will load the the language module by itself, and then you can use it in your configuration in the module section. Let me show you this for a second. Config management, and then, for example, application, Python, there is a module, and this is the name of the module. In our case, it's Python 3. This is how you can use it. Great. So this is as again as said, the way we have to do it for OpenSUSE, as there are no pre-built binaries available. Sorry for that. So yeah, this is from the overall section, and I want to show you one more thing when it comes to security. We have a security checklist in the how-to session or section. And I want to point out a couple of things here. So I said, secure your socket and state. Do not expose those two things to the outside world. Configuring Ssl and Tls. Since version 1.23, we have an absolutely great opportunity that NGINX Unit can handle certificates based on SNI. So you can have multiple certificates issued by certbot or Let's Encrypt, and NGINX Unit will check which certificate is the best suitable one based on the SNI information. I have a video about this feature on my YouTube channel, and I will show you the name or the link to the YouTube channel in a second. So make sure you check this one out. This is a really cool feature. Yeah, error-proof your routes. As said, routes are basically very, 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 very powerful. And yeah, so make sure you check your routes after adding some new applications. There will be another video on my YouTube channel soon that will explain the route object in much more detail for about an hour. App data protection is a very cool thing. So we can use something like file permissions, which is good. So every application on NGINX Unit can run with its own run user, and I would suggest to do this. Create a user that is not be able to have an active TTY on your server with something like sbin false as a default shell, and then configure a unit to use this run user to host your application code and adjust the file permissions accordingly. And the isolation features is really, really powerful when it comes to security, because we can hook into the namespace support and file system isolation. And let me click here or here to show you this. So for example, I've already checked this on the OpenSUSE system. If something like namespace is a thing, it is a thing. So that means you can use this feature on OpenSUSE 15. That's the version I'm using. So that means you can isolate the file system for your application. So that means from inside your application, it looks like that your path starting with a slash. So that's like your root file system. So you can hide the structure of your files, of your directories or a file system from your application, which is definitely a pretty useful feature. And yeah, the namespaces thing is another very complex and powerful topic I will dive into in another session on my YouTube channel, handling all the important security things for namespaces. Yeah, so make sure you read our security guide on NGINX Unit or on unit.nginx.org, as it has a lot of very, very, very important information about how you handle your application secure. And yeah, basically that's all to say about this. And in the combination of the different language modules and the listeners and routes and the way that you configure the NGINX Unit app server with a RESTful API and with the security features of having TLS termination, certificate management, certificate rotation, namespaces, file system isolation, run uses, it is a really good opportunity to use NGINX Unit instead of having a lot of Docker containers hosted or deployed on your app server, and something that keeps your application server clean and, for the DevOps people, manageable, maintainable, as you have one unit instance, one config endpoint, and you can see what's going on, what's configured on your application server with a single curl command. And yeah, again, if you have any questions, let me know. I'm around on Twitter with Linux_Lenny, or subscribe my YouTube channel, which is at tibxs91, to get more updates on NGINX Unit and all other things NGINX. Please do not hesitate to ask questions or give me feedback about anything you heard today. It's really appreciated all the time. I said, I can't say that often enough. Please reach out if you have any questions on Twitter, on YouTube.